Hello everyone. Tonight we're about to explore a mystery that may change how you see the Earth forever. What if we're not the first intelligent beings to walk this planet? What if an ancient alien civilization once ruled the Earth and vanished without leaving a single trace? No ruins, no records, nothing, just questions buried deep beneath our feet. So set your pillow and blanket and get ready to dive into the forgotten shadows of time, where science ends and mystery begins. Before we start, if you genuinely like my work, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? What if everything we believe about human history is just the latest chapter? We walk around this planet, assuming that we are the first intelligent species to rise, to build, to dream. But what if we're not? What if, long before the first pyramid was ever built, before the first wheel turned, Earth had already been home to a civilization far older, and maybe even far more advanced than ours? It's a question that haunts curious minds, one that feels more like science fiction than science fact. But even scientists have begun to ask it seriously. Were we truly the first intelligent life forms on this planet? Or did someone or something come before us? The idea seems absurd at first. If there had been a civilization before us, surely we'd see their cities, their machines, their bones, wouldn't we? But then you think about time, not a few thousand years, not even a million, but hundreds of millions of years. Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and humans, as we know ourselves, have only been around for about 300,000 years. That's just a blink, a grain of sand on an endless beach of time. So what if another intelligent species rose and fell 100 million years ago? Would we even know? Consider this: if human civilization collapsed tomorrow, in just 10,000 years, most of our buildings would be gone. In 1 million years, even our bones would vanish. Plastics might survive a bit longer, maybe a few radio waves drifting through space. But after 100 million years, it would be like we never existed. So then, the terrifying question isn't where are their remains, it's what if their remains were already erased? This leads us to something called the Silurian hypothesis, proposed by NASA scientists Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank. It's named after a fictional race of intelligent reptiles in a Doctor Who episode, creatures who lived on Earth long before humans. The hypothesis explores whether it's possible to detect signs of a past industrial civilization in the geologic record, even millions of years later. And the answer: it's not easy. In fact, it's almost impossible. Geological processes like erosion, subduction, and shifting tectonic plates mean that Earth's surface is constantly recycled. If an advanced civilization existed millions of years ago, their cities might have been swallowed by the sea, crushed by the earth, or ground into dust by glaciers. Think about this. If the dinosaurs had developed technology, where would their cities be now? Their bones are rare enough, just scattered fossils here and there. Now imagine trying to find a fossil of a steel skyscraper after 100 million years of tectonic chaos. The evidence would be buried, eroded, maybe even vaporized. But still, are there clues, tiny hints, oddities in the geological record? Some researchers think so. There are periods in Earth's history when carbon levels spiked suddenly, when strange metals like plutonium-244 and technetium, elements that don't occur naturally, appear without explanation. Could these anomalies be leftovers from something more than natural processes? Then there's the mystery of the out-of-place artifacts. Objects like the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device that functions like a modern computer, centuries ahead of its time. Or the London hammer, a tool that some claim was found encased in rock over 100 million years old. These artifacts are controversial, often dismissed by scientists. But what if even one of them is real? What if they hint at a story much older than ours? And it's not just objects. Think about the myths. Nearly every ancient culture speaks of gods who came from the sky, of civilizations wiped out in floods or fire, of golden ages that ended in ruin. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki. The Mayans told of ancient sky beings. The Egyptians believed their gods gave them knowledge. Are these just stories, or distant memories passed down from a time long before ours? Now imagine this 200 million years ago. During the time of the dinosaurs, a species of intelligent beings evolves. Not mammals, but perhaps some form of reptile. Over millions of years they develop language, culture, technology. Maybe they learn to harness energy, build machines, explore their world. But then, disaster strikes. A meteor, a supervolcano, climate collapse. Their cities crumble, their species fades, and over the next 100 million years, all physical traces of them disappear. Only the deepest layers of Earth remember, and we don't dig deep enough. Would we ever know? Some argue that if a prior civilization existed, they might have left behind signals not on Earth, but beyond it, perhaps on the Moon, where there's no atmosphere, no erosion, no tectonics. Or on Mars, where the dry environment could preserve artifacts for millions of years. So far, we haven't found anything definitive. But what if we're not looking in the right places? And what if the traces they left behind are biological, not technological? Could they have altered DNA, seeded life, guided evolution in some way? Some fringe theories suggest that the human genome contains anomalies that hint at outside interference, junk DNA with unknown functions. Mainstream science doesn't support these ideas, but again, it's hard to prove a negative. Let's flip the question. If humanity vanished today, what would we leave behind? In a million years, would anyone know we were here? Our skyscrapers would collapse, our monuments crumble, forests would grow over cities, the seas would rise, Earth would move on. Maybe some remnants would remain, a shard of plastic, a strange alloy, but would it be enough for some future species to say, ah, yes, there was once a civilization here, and if they found something, would they even recognize it for what it was? Now, imagine this happening, not once, but multiple times, civilizations rising and falling, each one forgetting the last, some destroyed by nature, others by their own hand. Maybe every 100 million years, Earth resets itself. Maybe we're just one in a long line of intelligent species, each one thinking they were the first, each one wondering what came before. It's a humbling thought, and also a terrifying one, because if advanced species did exist before us and they're gone, what does that say about our future? Is this planet cursed to forget? Are intelligent civilizations always doomed to self-destruct before they can leave lasting proof? There's also the unsettling idea that we're not supposed to know, that something or someone ensures that every trace is erased, whether through nature or something more intentional. We might never uncover the full truth. Maybe that's why ancient knowledge was always guarded by mystery, by riddles, by myths. Maybe the past is not lost, it's just hidden. And maybe, just maybe, we've already found the truth, but we don't know how to see it. The rocks beneath our feet could hold the memory of a vanished age. The sands of the desert may have once covered glass towers. The bottom of the ocean may still cradle the ruins of a world that dared to reach too far. So, are we really the first? Or are we the latest? What makes this idea so compelling is not just its mystery, but what it reflects back at us. It forces us to confront the fragility of our own existence, to realize that no matter how advanced we become, we are not immune to time or to nature, that all civilizations, no matter how mighty, can fall. And when they do, the earth doesn't weep, it simply waits for the next chapter. Maybe one day, far in the future, someone else will ask the same question about us. They sit or stand in a forest that once was New York or Paris or Tokyo. They sit or dig through layers of stone, find a strange object and wonder, who were these people? What were they like? Were they the first? And perhaps they'll never know. just like we may never know what came before us. But that's the beauty of the mystery. It keeps us curious. It reminds us that our history is not set in stone, but still being written, and maybe, just maybe, someone else once held that same thought 1,000,000 years ago. Fossils are the storytellers of time. They whisper secrets from a world we'll never visit, from creatures we'll never see. Each bone, each imprint in rock, tells a story that began long before humans ever opened their eyes to the stars. But what if some of those stories aren't just about dinosaurs or ancient mammals? What if, buried among the bones and sediments, there are clues, missed, ignored, or misunderstood, that point to something far stranger? Could signs of a lost alien race be hiding in plain sight? We tend to think of fossils as remnants of purely biological life, bones, shells, leaves, but the fossil record also holds traces of behavior, footprints in volcanic ash, burrows in ancient mud, even fossilized dung. These small details paint pictures of the lives that once flourished here, but they also raise a haunting question. If an intelligent species existed before us, or arrived from elsewhere, would we recognize their traces in the fossil record? Perhaps not. Our scientific lens is shaped by what we expect to find. We expect dinosaurs, we expect trilobites, we expect mammoth bones. So that's what we're trained to see. But if something falls too far outside those expectations, if a fossil doesn't fit into our known family tree, we often label it as an anomaly, a misidentified structure, or simply a fluke of geology. In doing so, we might be brushing right past the most profound discoveries in human history. Imagine for a moment a fossil that appears artificial, say, a perfectly symmetrical shape embedded in stone deep beneath layers of earth that date back millions of years. If it doesn't resemble any known organism, and if it lacks bone or shell structure, it might be dismissed as a strange mineral formation. But what if it wasn't? What if it was the fossilized remnant of a tool, a mechanism, or even a fragment of a being, unlike any on our biological chart? There have been claims, mostly from fringe researchers, about such anomalies. Stories circulate of machined metal spheres found in South African mines, embedded in 2.8 billion-year-old rock. There are tales of carved stones resembling gears or discs found in places with no known history of tool use. Mainstream scientists often attribute these to natural geological processes, like crystalline growth or compression patterns, and maybe they're right. But what if they're not? Science works best when it's skeptical, but it falters when it's dismissive. A single misidentified artifact could rewrite everything we know about our planet's past. But who would dare stake their career on a fossil that suggests intelligent design in the Precambrian era? Who would challenge the entire framework of evolutionary history for one inexplicable object? Perhaps that's why some clues are quietly stored away, logged without attention, or ignored entirely. And yet, the possibility lingers. Let's take another example. Trace fossils, things like footprints, claw marks, or resting impressions, offer indirect evidence of a creature's behavior. In a few rare cases, scientists have discovered fossilized trackways that appear bipedal and predate known bipedal animals. These findings are controversial. Most are dismissed as misidentified erosion patterns or incomplete data. But what if just one of them is legitimate? What if a creature walked on two legs long before it should have? Wouldn't that suggest either a convergent evolution of intelligence or a visitor? Of course, the fossil record is full of gaps. It's estimated that over 99% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct, and many left no trace behind. Fossilization is rare. It requires a precise set of conditions: quick burial, lack of oxygen, mineral-rich environments. Most creatures simply decay and vanish. So if an intelligent species had delicate bones or a body structure unlike anything we recognize, their remains might dissolve into the earth without leaving a trace. And if they didn't die in places where fossils typically form, we'd never find them. Now, let's look at it another way. What if this civilization or species didn't just die out, but chose to erase itself? Or perhaps it left Earth entirely. In that case, any remaining traces would be rare and subtle. Fossils, if they exist at all, might resemble nothing we've ever seen. A fragment of unknown metal fused with mineral. A latticework of carbon that doesn't resemble bone or shell. Would we have the vision to recognize it? There's also the strange phenomenon of pseudo-fossils, natural rock formations that look eerily like bones, skulls, or tools. Some amateur fossil hunters have sworn they found humanoid remains embedded in ancient rock strata, only to be told they're just oddly shaped stones. The resemblance is sometimes uncanny. Could some of these be real, or are they tricks of light and shadow, our brains projecting meaning onto randomness? In the mid-20th century, a man in Texas claimed to have found a fossilized human footprint inside the same layer of rock as dinosaur tracks. The scientific community dismissed it. Most believed it was either a hoax or a misinterpretation of erosion marks. And yet, the image persists, a human-like footprint beside the thunderous steps of a creature extinct for 65 million years. If true, it would destroy everything we thought we knew. If false, it's a reminder of how eager we are to find ourselves in the past. The truth may lie somewhere in between. There are also legends from indigenous cultures around the world, stories of ancient beings that came from the stars, shaped the earth, and vanished. These tales often mention beings with unusual features, tall, glowing, or even metallic. Could some of these stories be echoes of real encounters? Memories passed down through oral traditions, distorted over time but rooted in something real. Skeptics argue that these are metaphors, symbolic tales to explain the unknown. But what if they're more literal than we think? What if the memory of a non-human species has been fossilized not in stone but in story? Our search for fossils focuses mostly on carbon-based life as we know it. But what if a prior intelligent species wasn't carbon-based at all? What if it was silicon-based? Or something we haven't even imagined? The remains of such beings might not fossilize in any recognizable way. We could be walking over them every day, mistaking them for unremarkable rocks. And then there's the ocean floor, one of the least explored places on Earth. Vast regions lie untouched, their ancient layers hidden beneath miles of water and sediment. If a civilization once lived and died near coastlines, or even under the sea, its fossil record might be inaccessible to us. Or worse, it might already have been destroyed by shifting tectonic plates. In recent years, deep-sea expeditions have uncovered bizarre structures on the ocean floor, some natural, some unexplained. Could some of these be ruins? Fossils of cities lost not to time but to tide. The possibility grows even more intriguing when we consider that some fossils aren't of bodies but of actions. In 2002, a team of researchers found a perfectly preserved trilobite that had been crushed by a falling object. Most likely another trilobite. The fossilized scene captured a moment in time, a story frozen in rock. If a non-human species ever roamed Earth and left behind tools, could we find a fossil that shows a creature holding something, using something, creating something? Even a single fossilized interaction, a being with an unnatural shape, caught mid-motion with an artificial object would change everything. And what about our own interpretation of fossils we already have? Some dinosaur skulls, for example, have massive cranial cavities suggesting complex brains, but without soft tissue we can't be certain how intelligent they were. Could we be underestimating the mental capacity of certain prehistoric species, ones that might have had early forms of communication, society, or even ritual? If so, then the fossils we've already collected might be hiding their truth in plain sight. Not because they're lying, but because we're not asking the right questions. What we call unknown fossils are often catalogued and forgotten. Museums store thousands of unclassified or ambiguous specimens, bones, shapes, fragments that don't fit the puzzle. They're set aside, not because they're unimportant, but because no one knows what to do with them. What if the answers are in those drawers? What if the key to an alien past is sitting in a dusty box, overlooked for decades? Our understanding of Earth's history is limited by our tools, our assumptions, and our imagination. We think we know what intelligence looks like. We think we know what life should be, but the more we learn, the more we realize how little we truly understand. The fossils of the unknown are not just bones in stone, they are the anomalies, the strange artifacts, the unexplainable shapes. They're the footprints that don't belong, the tools that predate humanity, the skeletons that defy classification, and perhaps most chilling of all, they are the clues we've already found, but refuse to see. So the next time we hold a fossil in our hand, maybe we should ask ourselves, is this a bone, a shell, a piece of Earth's natural past, or is it something else? Something older, smarter, stranger. Something we missed because we weren't ready to find it. And if the truth was buried long ago, are we ready now? Beneath the soil we walk on each day, beneath the roots of trees and the layers of forgotten history, lies something even older. We've drilled into the earth, mined its minerals, extracted its oil, and mapped its crust. But even with all that effort, we've barely scratched the surface. And that leaves one tantalizing, almost terrifying question. What if something is down there? Something not made by nature, but by intelligence? Could ancient alien machinery be buried beneath our feet, waiting silently for us to discover it? The idea sounds like science fiction. Machines buried deep in the earth? Alien tech hidden for millions of years? Surely we'd have found something by now, right? But that assumption might be a little too optimistic. Because the earth is vast, constantly changing, and endlessly secretive. In fact, no human has ever drilled deeper than 7.6 miles into the crust, less than 0.2% of Earth's radius. The rest of it, thousands of miles of rock, metal, pressure, and heat, is completely untouched. It's a blind spot, a place full of unknowns. And where the unknown begins, so does the possibility. Now imagine this. Hundreds of millions of years ago, before the first dinosaurs roamed, Earth was already home to intelligent life, but not human. Maybe they came from another planet. Maybe they were born here. Either way, they advanced, they thrived, and they built. But they didn't build upwards like us. They built down. They understood the surface was fragile, vulnerable to meteors, climate change, solar flares. So they dug deep, constructing vast machines, reactors and knowledge vaults far beneath the surface where time and nature couldn't touch them. And when they were gone, by choice or by catastrophe, their creations remained buried in silence. Silent, waiting, forgotten. Could that really be possible? Let's take a closer look at what we don't know. Geological activity on Earth constantly recycles its crust. Plate tectonics pushes continents around like puzzle pieces on a slow-moving game board. Ocean floors are swallowed back into the mantle through subduction zones. Mountains rise, crumble, and vanish. Cities, even entire civilizations, could be erased by just a few million years of Earth's natural rhythms. But machines made from unknown materials, from metals that don't corrode, from alloys we haven't even discovered yet, they might survive much longer, especially if placed where no tectonic action touches them. Imagine a buried facility the size of Manhattan, sitting 5 miles below your feet, embedded in a stable slab of continental crust. You wouldn't see it. You wouldn't hear it. No signal would escape. But if it exists, and you happen to stumble upon it, perhaps while digging a new mine or during a deep Earth seismic scan, you'd be uncovering something that predates not just our history, but our very species. Some researchers and theorists have pointed to strange signals coming from below the Earth. Low-frequency hums, rhythmic pulses, or seismic anomalies that seem too regular to be natural. In most cases, scientists attribute these to tectonic stress, volcanic activity, or human interference. But sometimes these signals have no clear source. What if they're not natural at all? What if they're echoes of old machines, still running, still humming after millions of years. Of course, this theory doesn't come from nowhere. There have been reports, though rare and often controversial, of strange artifacts found deep underground. Metallic spheres recovered from deep rock formations, perfectly geometric shapes discovered during mining operations. In one case, a spark plug-like object was allegedly found inside a chunk of 500,000-year-old stone. Most of these stories are dismissed as hoaxes or misinterpretations, but if even one is genuine, it changes everything. And then there's the technology we're just now developing. Drills that can reach deeper, scanners that can map underground anomalies using gravitational waves, AI that can analyze seismic data for unnatural patterns. These tools might soon allow us to see into parts of the Earth we've never examined. What happens if they detect something that doesn't belong? Consider this possibility: a massive underground structure, buried miles below a desert or beneath the ocean floor. It's completely sealed, immune to time, untouched by tectonic movement. Inside, there's machinery silent, still powered by some unknown energy source. Energy? Communication? Defense? Or perhaps preservation? Could it contain a record of a species long gone? Or worse, could it be watching, waiting for a specific signal before it awakens? This isn't just the stuff of sci-fi anymore. Even in modern science, there are whispers of possibilities. NASA and other organizations use deep Earth data to model planetary cores. In the process, they've sometimes recorded anomalies, changes in density, unexplained movements of materials, or sharp reflections that suggest something solid in places where there should only be molten rock. Now, scientists will tell you these anomalies are likely metallic inclusions, mineral deposits, or ancient meteorite fragments. But once again, we return to the same question. What if one of them isn't? What if, deep within Earth's oldest layers, there's a piece of technology forgotten by time, unknown to science, and completely alien? Let's go deeper. Some of the world's oldest rock formations date back nearly 4 billion years. They've seen the rise and fall of continents, oceans, life itself. If alien visitors came during that early time, when Earth was still volatile yet full of potential, they might have left something behind. Not on the surface, but embedded deep inside, hidden not just from view but from time. If such machinery exists, its construction would surpass everything we know. It might not even resemble anything we'd call a machine. It could be organic, it could be crystalline, it could be a living structure that defies our understanding of engineering. And maybe, just maybe, Earth wasn't the only planet to receive such visitors. Mars has deep rift valleys. The Moon has ancient lava tubes. Jupiter's moon Europa hides an ocean beneath ice. Could other planets in our solar system also hold buried machines, part of a forgotten network scattered across time and space? There's another angle to consider, one that's even more unsettling. What if the machines aren't dormant? What if they're active? Observing, studying, guiding? We assume that if there were alien probes or installations on Earth, we'd see them in the sky. But a civilization truly advanced millions of years ahead of us wouldn't waste energy floating ships in our atmosphere. They'd embed quiet, self-repairing, nearly invisible sensors deep in the Earth where no war or weather could touch them. And from there they'd learn everything: our biology, our technology, our thoughts. And if we ever got too close to discovering them, would they allow it? There's a strange pattern in human discovery. Every time we dig too deep, ask too many questions, or find something strange, the story either disappears or is ridiculed. Scientists lose funding, artifacts vanish, witnesses go silent, conspiracy theories grow like weeds in the dark. Maybe it's all coincidence, or maybe some system is designed to keep the truth hidden. But if we assume, just for a moment, that buried alien technology exists, then we must ask, why was it left here? Was Earth once a testing ground, a laboratory, a seed planet, or was it a refuge? a safe house built to endure cosmic catastrophes. And most chilling of all, could it have been a prison? We don't know. We can only speculate, but the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. What's beneath us remains a secret not because it hides from us, but because we haven't looked deep enough. Our drills stop miles above the core. Our satellites map only the surface. Our curiosity is focused on the sky when the truth might lie below. One day, we might stumble upon something that changes our understanding of reality. A deep-sea drilling rig might pull up something impossible. A seismic survey might reveal a perfect cube of metal embedded in ancient rock. A magnetic scan might detect a power source where there should be none. And when that day comes, we'll be faced with a decision to deny what we see or to accept that we were never alone. That Earth was not just our home, but someone else's project. Someone older. Someone smarter. We like to think we're the masters of this planet, the first and only species to rise to intelligence. But maybe we're not pioneers. Maybe we're inheritors wandering through the ashes of a story we've yet to discover. So, the next time you feel the ground beneath your feet, ask yourself, is it just rock and soil? Or is it the roof of something far older, something waiting to be found? There are moments in history when the ground gives up a secret, and everything we thought we knew begins to tremble. A tool, a mechanism, a carved stone, not remarkable in itself, until it's tested, dated, analyzed, and suddenly it doesn't belong. It's too old, too advanced, too perfect. And that's when the question begins to echo. Could this be from a time before human civilization? Could someone, or something, have walked this earth with knowledge far beyond what history has allowed? The world is filled with artifacts that puzzle archaeologists and historians. Most of them have simple explanations, natural formations mistaken for tools, misidentified relics, or clever hoaxes. But a few resist every attempt at explanation. They sit in museum basements, private collections, or dusty university drawers, filed away because they raise questions that no one wants to answer. These are the unexplainable artifacts, and each one whispers a possibility we're too afraid to speak aloud. Take, for example, the Antikythera mechanism, found in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece in 1901. This ancient device is often called the world's first analog computer. Made of bronze gears and dials, it could predict solar eclipses and track planetary movements with remarkable precision. It dates to around 100 BCE, but no other device with its complexity appears in history for another 1,000 years. How is that possible? How could such advanced technology appear, fully formed, then vanish for centuries? Some argue it was a unique invention, a fluke of genius. Others suggest it was part of a lost tradition, one that was destroyed, forgotten, or hidden. But what if the Antikythera mechanism wasn't a Greek invention at all? What if it was a copy, a replication of something even older, passed down from a civilization we no longer remember? It's not the only artifact that raises this question. In the 1960s, miners working in South Africa discovered dozens of small metallic spheres embedded in rock formations over 2.8 billion years old. The spheres, made of an alloy not known to occur naturally, were perfectly balanced and had grooves etched around their equators. Scientists called them Klerksdorp spheres. Most dismissed them as natural mineral formations, but others weren't so sure. How could such precise and balanced objects form inside rock that predates all known life? Could they be the remnants of machinery, bearings from ancient devices? Or are they messages left in stone? Skeptics laugh off such ideas, but the questions don't go away, especially when similar objects are found in other parts of the world in caves, mines, and excavation sites where they have no business being. In 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Chi Pu Te was exploring a cave in the Bayan Ha Mountains when he reportedly discovered hundreds of stone discs, each carved with tiny spiral grooves. These became known as the dropper stones. According to controversial translations, they tell the story of a spacecraft crash and beings who became stranded on Earth. The mainstream archaeological community never accepted the stones as authentic, and today most references to them have been buried under layers of skepticism and conspiracy. But for some, the story is too strange and too specific to ignore. Why do these artifacts always seem to suggest technology, and not just simple tools but advanced machinery, gear systems, power sources, navigation instruments? Why do they hint at knowledge of astronomy, magnetism, metallurgy, sciences that humans supposedly didn't master until thousands of years later? In 1851, a strange metallic object was blasted from solid rock during mining operations in Dorchester, Massachusetts. It was described as a silver-zinc alloy vase, intricately inlaid with floral patterns. The rock it was embedded in was over 100 million years old. Newspapers reported the discovery, but scientists dismissed it. It couldn't be real. It didn't fit the timeline. And just like that, the artifact disappeared, lost in the folds of history. And yet it wasn't set. The last. From time to time, stories emerge. Objects encased in coal, tools found in rock layers that should predate humanity, wires embedded in stone, carvings showing people with what appear to be telescopes, globes, or flying machines. Each story is met with the same reaction: dismissal, ridicule, silence. But one has to ask, how many coincidences become a pattern? In 1902, a team excavating a Bronze Age site in Baghdad unearthed what looked like a simple clay jar, but inside was a copper cylinder, and inside that, an iron rod. Some researchers believe this was an ancient battery capable of generating a small electrical current. Tests later showed it could indeed produce voltage when filled with vinegar or grape juice. Known today as the Baghdad battery, its true purpose remains unknown. Was it used for electroplating, healing, ritual, or was it just one piece of a much larger and more sophisticated system, most of which has been lost? Now imagine if you found a microchip in a layer of clay, or a fiber optic strand embedded in stone, or a fragment of glass with perfect molecular structure far beyond our modern capabilities. If such objects exist, and some claim they do, what would they mean? Would we be ready to accept them, or would we hide them? The implications are enormous. If even one artifact is real, truly out of place, truly beyond our current level of understanding, it means our history books are incomplete. It means we're not the first. It means that long before the Sumerians or the Egyptians, before the great flood myths or the forgotten cities, someone else was here. Someone who understood things we're only beginning to rediscover. And yet, when we look at ancient structures, megaliths, temples, pyramids, we often see engineering that defies explanation: stones too massive to move, cuts too precise for primitive tools, alignments with stars and solstices that suggest astronomical knowledge far ahead of its time. Could the tools used to build these monuments have been handed down, passed along from a distant, forgotten age? Consider Pumapunku, a site in Bolivia known for its massive, finely cut stone blocks. The precision of the cuts, the interlocking joints, and the sheer weight of the stones have led some to speculate that advanced tools, possibly even laser-like cutting instruments, must have been used. Mainstream archaeology attributes the work to the Tiwanaku people, but the techniques remain a mystery, and once again we're left asking, how? Or take the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in modern-day Pakistan. In some ruins, evidence suggests a sudden high-temperature destruction, walls vitrified, bodies lying in the streets as if frozen in time. Some fringe theorists suggest an explosion not unlike a nuclear blast. Of course, this is speculative, but it makes you wonder what kind of tools, what kind of energy were these people playing with? Could it all be coincidence? Or is there a hidden thread connecting these mysteries, a forgotten chapter in Earth's story that keeps slipping through our fingers? It's easy to dismiss these ideas as fantasy, but we must remember not long ago, people laughed at the idea of meteorites. Scientists dismissed them as superstition. Stones can't fall from the sky, they said. It took years, decades for the truth to be accepted. The same is true of deep-sea life. tectonic plates and quantum physics. What we reject today might be common knowledge tomorrow. And perhaps that's why the most mysterious artifacts are hidden, not in vaults but in plain sight, sitting in museums with the wrong labels, or in private collections feared and misunderstood, or still buried beneath layers of earth waiting for someone curious enough and brave enough to dig deeper. Imagine the moment that changes everything. A team of archaeologists uncovers a chamber beneath an ancient temple. Inside, they find a device made of unknown material, still humming faintly with energy, not made by any known culture, not even made by hands. Tested, analyzed, proven to be millions of years old. What happens then? Would governments reveal it? Would scientists embrace it? Or would the world panic? Because if technology predates civilization, then so does intelligence. And if intelligence existed before us, what became of it? Was it destroyed? Did it leave? Or is it still here, watching, waiting? Unexplainable artifacts are more than curiosities. They are keys, fragments, warnings perhaps, or invitations. Each one whispers a truth we're not quite ready to hear. That history isn't a straight line, that progress isn't guaranteed, that we're not alone, not in space and not in time. So the next time you see an old relic behind glass or a dusty photo of a strange object in a forgotten book, remember this: the past may be deeper than we imagine, and the hands that shaped our world may not have been human at all. Long before GPS, satellites or airplanes, there were maps. Ancient maps, drawn on parchment or carved into stone, detailing coastlines, islands and even continents. Many of these maps seem primitive, symbolic, more art than science. But every now and then we stumble upon one that doesn't fit. A map that is just too accurate, too precise. A map that seems to know more than it should. And with that, the questions begin to echo through time. Who made it? How did they know? And perhaps most chilling of all, were they even human? In 1929, a group of scholars in Istanbul unearthed a map drawn by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. At first glance, it was a beautiful 16th century artifact. But as researchers looked closer, their wonder grew into disbelief. The Piri Reis map showed parts of the South American coast in stunning detail, features that were supposedly unknown at the time. But the real shock came when they noticed something even stranger. A landmass at the bottom of the map shaped uncannily like Antarctica. That alone might not be surprising, until you realize that Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, nearly 300 years later. And even then, it was buried under miles of ice. But the Piri Reis map seemed to depict Antarctica's subglacial coastline, as if the continent were drawn not as it is now, but as it was tens of thousands of years ago when it wasn't covered in ice. Modern scientists have since confirmed that the subglacial topography shown on the map aligns closely with what we now know, thanks to satellite imagery and radar scans that can see beneath the ice. But how could a map from the 1500s contain information that even we didn't discover until the 20th century? Where did this knowledge come from? Piri Reis himself offers a clue. In the notes on his map, he states that it was compiled from older source maps, many of which were said to date back to ancient times. He mentions that some of these charts were centuries old, perhaps even from the time of Alexander the Great. But if those maps were accurate enough to show ice-free Antarctica, who created them? To consider that question, we must dig deeper, into the past, into the stones, and into the very foundations of civilization itself. Across the world, there are structures, massive, ancient, and shrouded in mystery, that defy explanation. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance. Not just a tomb, but a marvel of engineering and mathematics. Its base is aligned almost perfectly to true north, within a fraction of a degree. It's oriented more precisely than the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, built with the help of modern instruments. But the Great Pyramid was constructed over 4,500 years ago. According to mainstream history, The builders had no compasses, no sextants, and no advanced astronomy tools. So how did they align it so perfectly? And it's not just the orientation. The dimensions of the pyramid seem to encode mathematical constants, like p and the golden ratio. The latitude of the pyramid corresponds closely to the speed of light in meters per second. Coincidence? Maybe, but when coincidences begin to pile up, they start to look like intention. Let's travel across the world to South America, specifically to the ancient city of Tiwanaku near Lake Titicaca. There we find a complex of structures carved with such precision that modern engineers still debate how they were made. Stones weighing over 100 tons were cut and fit together like puzzle pieces, without mortar, without gaps. And like the pyramids, these sites also appear to have celestial alignments, matching solstices, equinoxes, and even star positions. Further south lies the famous site of Nazca, where enormous geoglyphs are etched into the Peruvian desert. From the ground, they're nothing special, but from the air they come alive, colossal figures of animals, people, and shapes stretching across miles. Some say they're offerings to the gods. Others believe they're astronomical calendars. But a more provocative theory suggests they're something else entirely, markers for landing or navigation for beings that could fly. All around the globe, these patterns repeat impossibly advanced knowledge in a supposedly primitive time, precise geographic alignment, complex math, astronomical positioning. And then there are the maps. The Orontius Farneus map from 1531 also shows Antarctica, again free of ice. Other ancient charts show the coastlines of Africa, South America, and even parts of the Arctic with eerie accuracy. Long before any explorer supposedly mapped these areas, could they all be wrong? Could it be a case of coincidence? Or is it more likely that these maps are copies of something older, something created when these continents looked very different? Some scholars have floated the idea of a prehistoric seafaring civilization, one capable of global exploration long before the Egyptians, Sumerians, or Chinese. But no such civilization appears in our textbooks. If they existed, where are the cities, the records, the bones? Maybe they're gone, or maybe they were never fully human to begin with. It's here that we enter the realm of possibility, where science ends and wonder begins. What if Earth was visited in the distant past by beings from elsewhere? Visitors who mapped the planet from above, recording coastlines, mountain ranges, and ocean currents. Maybe they left. Maybe they died. Or maybe they stayed just long enough to pass on a spark of knowledge, one that would survive in fragments, in myths, in maps. Many ancient cultures speak of gods who came from the sky, bringing wisdom, tools, and laws. In Sumer they were the Anunnaki. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl. In Egypt, the god Thoth, all described as beings of immense knowledge and power, who taught early humans astronomy, agriculture, and architecture. Are these merely legends, or distorted memories of real encounters? If such beings shared their knowledge, or left behind tools, could that explain the sudden leap in mapping ability? Could it explain why some ancient maps show Earth from above, from angles no human could have achieved without flight? Some even appear to depict land masses as seen from space, a curved horizon, proportional continents, polar views. Let's not forget that much of human knowledge was lost throughout history. Libraries burned, cities fell, floods came. What if maps showing the full planet existed in ancient times and simply didn't survive? What if the maps we marvel at today are just shadows, survivors of a much older age? Even mainstream archaeologists admit that our understanding of ancient knowledge is incomplete. The Library of Alexandria alone was said to hold hundreds of thousands of scrolls, many of them lost forever. Who knows what records, charts, and astronomical tables were destroyed before we ever had the chance to see them? Then there's the mystery of Doggerland, an ancient landmass that once connected the UK to mainland Europe, now submerged under the North Sea, or Sunderland, beneath modern Indonesia, or Beringia, once bridging Russia and Alaska. These lost lands could have held entire civilizations, builders, astronomers, map makers, now erased by rising seas. If ancient people lived on those lands and if they had time to evolve knowledge slowly, over tens of thousands of years, who's to say they didn't chart the world? Maybe not with satellites or jets, but through long generations of exploration, through oral records passed down with care, or perhaps they had help. Some of the most mysterious ancient structures remain buried. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe predates Stonehenge by over 6,000 years and was deliberately buried by its own builders. Why? Was it an attempt to preserve knowledge through catastrophe, or to hide it? When satellite scans were used in Egypt, researchers discovered multiple massive underground structures, still unexcavated. In Antarctica, researchers found strange symmetrical shapes beneath the ice, dismissed as natural formations but still unexplained. So we come back to the maps. Maps that should not exist. Maps that know too much. Maps that hint at an Earth remembered differently. An Earth seen through other eyes. If ancient humans did not have this knowledge, then who did? And why does it keep resurfacing in fragments, in half-remembered texts, in misdated carvings, in legends too consistent to ignore? Perhaps the truth is layered, like the Earth itself, a foundation of forgotten memory, buried under centuries of erosion, conquest, and disbelief. The knowledge was once whole, then scattered, then mythologized, and today it haunts us from the edges of old scrolls and unexplained ruins. What we call ancient might not be ancient at all. It might be pre-human, or it might be the echo of a lost world, one advanced enough to map the Earth, but not lucky enough to survive it. In the end, we're left with a handful of clues, a map that knows Antarctica before the ice, a pyramid aligned with the stars, and legends that hint at gods from the sky. Alone, they're mysteries. But together, they form a question we still struggle to ask aloud. Were we truly the first to map the world or merely the latest to rediscover it? And if someone came before us, who were they? And where did they go? Picture Earth, but not as we know it. An Earth with continents slowly drifting, seas rising and falling, life spreading onto land but still fragile. No humans yet, no cities, no airplanes, no satellites. Frogs and early forests, strange creatures walking on four legs, the first insects in the sky. Now imagine that somewhere among that vast stretch of time, hundreds of millions of years ago, an intelligent species rose to build something like an industrial civilization. What if they harnessed energy, built factories, altered the climate, and then vanished, leaving almost no trace? This is not science fiction. It is what scientists Gavin A. Schmidt and Adam Frank asked in their 2018 thought experiment, published in the International Journal of Astrobiology. If there had been an industrial civilization before ours, could we detect it now? Could our geological record fingerprints of its existence? Or would time erase it completely? This speculation has come to be known as the Silurian hypothesis. The name Silurian comes from a fictional race from Doctor Who, which knew of a civilization long before humans, but that's just framing. The serious question is, given how Earth works, would the evidence survive, and do we already see anything that might fit unknowingly? The window for this possibility opens once complex life emerges on land, roughly the Devonian period about 400 million years ago. Before that, life is mostly oceanic or soft-bodied, less likely to leave durable traces. So the Silurian hypothesis focuses on the span between when land-based life could support industrial development and around 4 million years ago, before human ancestors fully dominate. What would we expect to see? If such a civilization had arisen and then vanished tens or hundreds of millions of years ago, Schmidt and Frank suggest that direct artifacts, machines, buildings, roads would be almost impossible to find after so much geological time. Erosion, tectonic plate movement, subduction, metamorphism, all these processes destroy or deeply alter most structures. Even our own buildings, plastics, metals, most wouldn't survive millions of years intact. Instead, what might survive is a geological fingerprint, subtle signals hidden in climate shifts, isotope anomalies, chemical changes in sediment, or rare elements that don't occur naturally in high abundance. The signature of industrial civilization is not just physical objects, it is change. The way life, chemistry, atmosphere, and climate respond. For example, the Anthropocene, the era we are currently in, is producing a geological signature, spikes in carbon dioxide and methane, chemical pollutants, traces of plastics, novel synthetic compounds, changes in sediments where heavy metals accumulate, radionuclides, altered nitrogen cycles, etc. Schmidt and Frank ask, would any of these signals survive cleanly enough after, say, 50 million years to allow a future researcher to conclude, yes, something weird, something unnatural happened here? Maybe, but most likely the signal would be mixed up with natural events, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, massive wildfires, shifts in ocean circulation, plate tectonics, natural carbon cycle perturbations. We'd need to distinguish industrial causes from natural ones, and that is hard, because many of Earth's past crises, mass extinctions, sudden climate changes, unusual isotope signatures, could in theory mimic what an industrial civilization might leave behind. In their paper, Schmidt and Frank note that there have indeed been abrupt events in Earth's history. Paleocene thermal maximum. Approximately 55 million years ago, late Devonian extinction approximately 380 million years ago, end Permian extinctions, etc., where carbon isotope shifts, rapid warming, ocean anoxia, big changes in sedimentation, abrupt changes in biota all occur. But to date, these events have natural explanations: volcanic activity, methane hydrate release, tectonic shifts, asteroid strikes. None require positing an unknown civilization. Still, the fact that we have these events shows that Earth can and does preserve dramatic environmental change, sometimes in global layers of sediment, sometimes seen in fossils, sometimes marked by shifts in geochemistry. So if a civilization had existed long ago, one strategy would be to look for anomalies on top of such natural events. A carbon spike combined with odd concentrations of synthetic compounds, traces of metals unlikely to occur naturally, or radionuclide signatures incompatible with purely natural decay or cosmogenic input. Another factor is how long the civilization lasted and how sustainable it was. A civilization that burned massive coal or fossil fuel would leave a much bigger and more obvious signal than one that used renewable energies or had practices minimizing long-term geological impact. The longer something persists, and the more intensive its industrial activity, the more likely some small traces survive. But the longer the span, the greater the chance of erasure. Think about how small our own geological footprint will look 100 million years from now. Some plastics might degrade or become buried. Metals could corrode or be recycled indirectly by natural processes. Rocks from buildings will crumble. Only the most durable or deep or chemically inert artifacts might survive. Layers bearing unusual element ratios, say high levels of lead, mercury, or even novel synthetic halogenated compounds, might remain. Some molecules might resist breakdown and be preserved in ocean sediments. Some synthetic organic biomarkers might survive under right conditions. Also, Earth's surface that we actually see is surprisingly young. Much of the land has been shaped, reshaped, destroyed by erosion, covered by volcanoes, sea level changes. The ocean crust is constantly recycled. Any part of seafloor older than about 170 million years has usually been subducted. So if the hypothetical civilization was mostly coastal or sea-based, chances are those areas are gone or deeply altered. Mountains erode, continents collide, metamorphism changes even sedimentary rock, heat breaks down organics, glaciers scrape away land, rain dissolves, plants crack stone. Time is relentless. Over tens of millions or hundreds of millions of years, even what seems solid can vanish. So the Silurian hypothesis doesn't say it must have happened. It says, if it did, we probably won't find much, and what we do find might be ambiguous. Then there's the question of testability. The authors propose concrete lines of evidence we could search for: isotopic anomalies, shifts in carbon isotopes, nitrogen cycle perturbations, sudden warming events in climate proxy records that don't align neatly with known volcanic or impact causes, traces of synthetic chemicals, stable organohalogens, plastics or materials that do not degrade easily, persistent heavy metals in unusual patterns, radionuclides with half-lives that suggest unnatural origins, and perhaps unexplained changes in fossil community structure, species disappearing inexplicably, vertebrates popping up, changes in organisms related to high metabolism or brain size, or social behavior. Another intriguing idea is looking beyond Earth. On the Moon, Mars, or other bodies with less geological recycling, traces might survive far better. If someone had placed artifacts on the Moon's stable surface millions or billions of years ago, they might still be detectable, or fissures, burials, or markings in Martian soil may survive longer than ours do here. But at present, no compelling evidence exists. Scientists have not found any well-documented synthetic organic biomarkers, or unexplained stable radionuclide anomalies cannot be explained by known natural processes. No verified technofossils, artifacts clearly manufactured rather than natural from before the human era, have been found. We have things that fascinate: odd isotope readings, unexplained fossils, strange geological layers, but none that demand an ancient industrial civilization as the best explanation. Why, then, pursue this? Because the hypothesis forces us to ask better questions. What is our impact on the planet, and how long will it last? What traces will future beings, human or otherwise, see of our existence? It also helps frame how we might search for other civilizations in remote planets or exomoons. What signatures are likely to survive long phasing? What kinds of markers would you look for if you dug into Martian strata? Because Earth may delete nearly everything. The Silurian hypothesis also carries philosophical weight. It challenges human confidence in being first, in assuming continuous progress, in believing that our civilization is special in the deep geologic timeline. It reminds us of the fragility of memory, of how easily knowledge, monuments, species can disappear when time and geology do their work. And it suggests humility, that evidence can be wiped, stories lost, civilizations erased, even those much more long-lived than ours. One unsettling possibility: maybe there were artifacts out there, machines, buildings, tools, that were obliterated or metamorphosed or sequestered deep underground. We simply cannot see them because we haven't looked, or geology has overprinted them, and perhaps we never will. So we return to the question: could an industrial civilization have existed millions of years ago? The answer is, it's possible, though there is no solid evidence yet. But the more important question may be, are we asking the right questions? Are we looking in the right places? And do we have the tools, the patience, the imagination to even recognize a signal when it presents itself, or think beyond what we expect? Because if someone came before us, they may have left not grand monuments, but fingerprints, small chemical shifts in sediments, tiny anomalies in isotope ratios, unusual compounds in deep layers, the shadows of their existence. And if we do find them, it would not just change archaeology or paleontology, it would change everything we believe about our place in this planet's history. If we imagine the possibility of an earlier civilization on Earth, one that rose, built, engineered, perhaps ruled vast landscapes, then one question looms more powerful than any other. If they existed, why are there no clear ruins? Why does nothing unmistakably industrial from before human civilization survive on the surface? The answer may lie not in conspiracy or cover-ups, but in something far more relentless: geological time, erosion, metamorphism, plate tectonics, climate shifts, Over millions of years, the Earth recycles its crust. It buries, destroys, and transforms. What might have been built in some ancient past could have been erased by processes so slow, so powerful, that even mountains vanish, coastlines shift, entire continents drift and collide. So when we search for alien ruins, maybe we are looking for something that literally no longer exists in recognizable form. Earth is dynamic. Every rock, every structure, every monument is subject to forces that wear it away. Water, wind, ice, shifts in temperature, chemical weathering, all conspire to break down even the hardest stone. Stone that looks eternal on our scale is fragile in geologic time. If there were temples, machines, cities older than tens of millions of years, exposed on the surface, they would likely be eroded to rubble, edges smoothed, details erased, anything protruding worn down, even metals corrode. Metals get buried, buried gets squashed, melted, folded into other rock. Concrete would disintegrate, glass shatters or dissolves, wood rots long ago. If the civilization used organic materials heavily, nearly all of that would be gone. Consider what happens to known structures over centuries. Think of ancient ruins from a few thousand years ago. Partial walls, crumbling masonry, faded inscriptions, but even those are under constant decay. Rain enters cracks, frost expands, plants root, microbes burrow. Over centuries, details wash away. Over millennia, structures collapse. Over tens of thousands of years, only the most durable base foundations survive. Now stretch that to millions of years. Stretch it to tens or hundreds of millions. The idea of anything recognizable surviving becomes almost unthinkable. Beyond surface weathering, there are deeper geological factors. Plate tectonics means crust is recycled. What is land today becomes subducted under another plate, pushed down into the mantle. Ocean floors older than approximately 170 million years are mostly recycled, gone. Mountains are worn by erosion. Their rocks carried off by rivers into seas. Sediments compress and lithify, then get metamorphosed under high temperatures and pressures. Any structure embedded in rock will eventually be subject to metamorphism. Stone heated, folded, chemically altered, crushed. If there were machines or buildings deep in the crust, even they could be melted or their materials fused or reformed into new minerals, losing their original shape. Another factor is burial. Paradoxically, burial can help preserve. Being buried under sediments, ash, or lava can protect against some forms of erosion. But over very long time, buried things face heat, pressure, chemical changes. Minerals may dissolve, metals may oxidize, organic material decays. Everything ages, and buried structures may be deformed by overlying weight. Infant folds, faults. The Earth's crust is also dynamic. Uplift, subsidence, earthquakes, volcanic action shift layers. What is buried might be moved, stretched, crushed. Even fossils rarely survive intact, unless circumstances are extraordinary. Some of Earth's fossil record shows us how rare preservation is. Soft tissues almost never survive, except in special settings, amber, permafrost, anoxic mud. Bones get mineralized, but even then they are often distorted, fragmented. Shells dissolve in acid or get crushed under pressure. Given that, imagine the fate of industrial artifacts, steel, metals, alloys, circuits, maybe plastic. Most of these materials are much less durable in the long term. Metals rust or corrode. Plastics break down under UV, oxygen, heat. Even concrete leaches, decomposes under various chemical conditions. Only maybe chemical or mineral traces survive, as unusual element concentrations, isotopic anomalies, non-natural compounds in sediment. Climate too plays a role. Glaciations, floods, desertification, shifting seas all reshape the land. A coastline can retreat or advance by kilometers over tens of thousands of years. Rivers can shift courses, deltas build up, seas dry up. A city that stood on a coast might get submerged or buried under sediment from upstream erosion, or if sea levels fall, that site becomes land, then desert, then buried or eroded. Weather extremes, windstorms, acidic rain, glaciers scour rock clean. Even massive and well-built stone monuments can be dismantled and reused by later civilizations for building material. Moreover, human material culture shows how fragile built things are even over short spans. The Parthenon, built 2,400 years ago, is already partly ruined. Medieval castles disintegrate. If left unmaintained, tombs collapse, statues erode, time, gravity, moisture, biological growth all destroy. So given millions of years, everything except perhaps very unusual material or very deeply buried remains would be gone or unrecognizable. Conservation of form is hard. Something recognizable as a temple needs sharp edges, identifiable features, but edges erode first. In exposed regions, wind and water abrade surfaces. In humid climates, chemical weathering can dissolve minerals, making carved detail fade. In colder climates, freeze-thaw cycles crack stone. Over millions of years, those cracks grow, stones break apart, shift, even monumental stonework moves, tilts, collapses, so if there once was a massive structure, after long enough time you might see nothing but a mound of rubble, completely disintegrated, or just an anomalous variation in sediment layering, nothing that cries out this was made by someone. Then there is the issue of recognition. Suppose some fragment survived. What materials would survive? And would we recognize them as artificial and pre-human? Mineralization could mask shapes. Metals might weather, rust, oxidize, or lose form. Plastics degrade, crack, fragment into microplastics, then perhaps chemically altered into something unrecognizable. Ceramics can survive, but if deeply buried and then metamorphosed, could become just another sediment. Even intact things may get misinterpreted. Geologists might see anomalous densities or unusual metal inclusions and assume natural ore or meteorite fragments. Strange structures might be thought to be unusual geological formations. The chance of misclassification or ignorance is high. Scientists who proposed ideas like the Silurian hypothesis, the notion that an industrial civilization could have existed long before humans, have pointed out that our current geological record gives no definitive industrial artifacts before the Anthropocene. Yet, they suggest that's expected if anything existed, because time erodes, buries, recycles. What we would find instead are tiny geochemical anomalies, isotope ratio shifts, synthetic molecules, unusual metal concentrations. But those are subtle and often ambiguous, must be distinguished from natural processes like volcanic activity, meteorite deposition, natural mineralization. So it's possible that clues are already in sediments, layers deep in the earth, but are interpreted under conventional assumptions, or in some cases are dismissed because they are too strange. Thinking about our own future may help clarify the scale. Picture human civilization vanishing today. Over the next few hundred years, buildings will collapse. Over thousands, nature will reclaim the land, forest overgrows roads, plants break stones, wooden parts rot. In a few tens of thousands of years, even many durable buildings will be unrecognizable. In a few million years, very little surface structure will endure. The earth will smooth the scars. Only perhaps foundation stones deeply buried, or massive underground structures untouched by erosion or tectonic activity, may leave something, and even those altered, over tens of millions, those too may be metamorphosed or buried beyond detection. Another complication. Earth's crust is not static. There is recycling, oceanic crust subduction, continental collision, mountain ranges forming and eroding, volcanic flows burying old land, sedimentation building up new layers. Geological uplift raises some buried sediment to surface. Erosion strips it away. But that means that what we see is a patchwork of recent exposures over much deeper buried history. Most ancient surfaces are buried or transformed. There are places where some ancient rocks survive: shields, cratons, regions with stable lithosphere, deep shields in continents that haven't been heavily disturbed. They preserve very old rock. But even there, the exposure is often of simple bedrock, often devoid of complex structures unless they were deeply buried and resistant. And if any civilization existed in those regions, on top of or near them, their traces would likely be buried under more recent sediment, eroded or metamorphosed or deformed beyond recognition. We also have an example: fossils from deep time or Dovitian, Cambrian, much of the Paleozoic eras. These are often fragmentary. Most life forms left no fossil record at all. Soft-bodied organisms are almost entirely lost except in special preservation zones. Bones are rare. Shells survive better. Impressions, not details. Many species known only from tiny parts. Given that, imagine trying to find structures built from materials that decay faster than bone, or from materials that require maintenance and repair. The odds are extremely low. They survive millions of years intact. Still, some features of Earth's geology serve as reminders that things can survive long ages, though only in altered, subtle forms. Mineral deposits, unusual isotopic signatures, layers of sediment that show abrupt change, maybe even anomalous metal leads, mercury, other heavy elements. If someone in the deep past had used metals or materials we don't recognize, perhaps their chemistry left trace elements in sediment. If there were massive climate changes triggered by industrial activity, maybe those are masked among natural events or misattributed. Then consider the search itself. Archaeology, paleontology, geology all have implicit assumptions. They assume human civilization is unique, and that artifacts younger than the current era are the only ones to look for. Deep pre-Cenozoic strata are less explored for artificial artifacts. Even dating methods, sampling and preservation bias favor biological remains, fossils and natural formations. So even if a ruin existed and left something, our methods might lack the resolution or the angle to see it as artificial or older than expected. Imagine a layer in rock 100 million years old, in a stable craton with an unusual concentration of metal, some synthetic compound, slight regular geometric patterns in inclusions, some disrupted strata that look like they were cut. That might be exactly what we'd expect from something artificial. But geologists might see just anomalous mineralization, vein of ore, natural fracturing, and move on. The piece may be misidentified or ignored because it doesn't fit into the known story of geology. Thus, the absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence, especially when you're asking whether something could survive millions of years under relentless geological processes. If alien ruins existed, the powerful forces of geological time might have erased or transformed them beyond recognition, eroded away, buried too deep, melted or metamorphosed or misidentified as natural formations. The world we see above ground today is only a thin veneer over an ever-changing, ever-recycled crust. It may turn out that what we think of as ruins is nothing compared to what once possibly stood, and we may never find a temple, a device, or a vehicle, but what might survive are whispers, odd isotopes, unnatural layers, chemical signatures, deviations in sediment structure. These are the ghost impressions of something lost. When people ask why no alien ruins, the most powerful answer is simply because time is relentless. Even mountains can fall. Even the hardest stone can wear away. Even metal melts or rusts. Even the deepest secrets underground eventually shift, fracture, change. So maybe the reason we haven't found anything undeniable is not that nothing was ever built, only that nothing of that kind could survive intact. And perhaps the only evidence of a pre-human alien presence would be those subtle, buried, transformed signals that we haven't yet recognized, or perhaps will never fully decipher. And in that thought lies both a challenge and a mystery. To accept that time might have erased almost everything, And yet still search, look for those anomalous traces. Question the assumptions, probe deep into the crust, analyze chemical signatures, consider shapes that don't fit, question what natural means. Because if an alien civilization once walked the earth, it may be gone in form, but not entirely in trace. What we find might be shadows of what once was, somewhere beneath your feet. Whether you stand in a desert, a forest, or a city, lie the layered pages of Earth's vast and ancient story. Each layer of sediment, each stratum of rock, is a memory, a silent record of cataclysms and calm, of creation and extinction, of things that once were and now are gone. Geologists call this story deep time, the concept of Earth's immense history, stretching back over 4.5 billion years. But buried within this unimaginable stretch of time may be more than just ancient oceans, dinosaurs, and plate tectonics. What if deep time hides something else, something we've never thought to look for? Could it be possible that remnants of an alien past are waiting, hidden in Earth's forgotten layers? We know so little about our planet's deep past. While we've walked on the moon and sent probes across the solar system, we've barely scratched the surface of Earth itself. The deepest drill hole ever made, the Kola super deep borehole in Russia, reached just over 7.5 miles down, and even that barely dented the crust, which averages 25 miles thick under continents. Most of Earth's rock layers remain untouched, unexamined, and unexplored. It's a reality few consider. We live on the skin of a planet whose interior has been largely left in mystery. We know the moon's surface better than we know the Earth's deep layers. And therein lies the wonder and the potential. Because if something extraordinary did happen in Earth's remote past, an advanced civilization, an alien visitation, an unnatural anomaly, it might not have left traces on the surface, where erosion, weather, and tectonics would have erased them. But deeper down, protected by rock and time, fragments may still remain. Maybe not in the form of shining towers or strange machines, but as anomalies, chemical residues, mineral compositions, or artifacts embedded in sediment no one has ever seen. They might be so deep that no shovel has ever come close. When we think of the Earth's history, we often reduce it to a few familiar eras: the age of the dinosaurs, the rise of mammals, the emergence of humans. But that's only the last few 100 million years. Before that, there were billions of years of Earth history, billions of years during which intelligent life could have emerged and vanished, without a trace visible to us today. The Cambrian explosion, the Permian extinction, the rise of early multicellular life, all fascinating, but they don't even scratch the surface of the planet's full biography. If an alien civilization came to Earth hundreds of millions of years ago, or even billions, what evidence would they leave behind? And more importantly, what evidence could survive? Surface structures would be lost to time, eroded, recycled by plate tectonics, buried beneath shifting continents. But a civilization capable of space travel may have understood this. If they wanted to leave something behind, intentionally or not, they would have had to place it where time moves slowly, where change happens over eons, not decades. They would have buried it deep, far below the layers where humans dig for resources or lay foundations. It's not such a strange idea. Even our own species, knowing the dangers of nuclear waste, is trying to create deep geological repositories, places where dangerous materials can be stored safely for 100,000 years or more. These are some of the most secure human-made structures, specifically designed to endure deep time. So imagine a species millions of years more advanced. Would they not also understand the permanence of Earth's deeper layers? Would they not choose to leave a legacy or a warning, buried far below beyond the reach of ordinary decay? What would that legacy look like? Not necessarily a spaceship or city preserved in stone, but maybe something smaller. A tablet made from a composite unknown to modern science. An alloy designed to resist corrosion. A shape so mathematically perfect it could not be of natural origin. Or even something digital, information encoded in mineral lattices or in the atomic structure of crystals, waiting for someone to crack the code. There are minerals that can store information for millennia. Scientists today are exploring how data can be etched into quartz or synthetic diamonds, potentially preserving libraries of information for millions of years. If we are doing it now, is it so hard to believe others may have done it long before us? And then there's the question no one likes to ask. Have we already found things that don't belong, but dismissed them because they didn't fit the story? There are occasional reports of anomalous artifacts found in coal seams, in ancient rock strata, in geological formations dated to millions of years ago, iron tools embedded in stone, strange metallic spheres in South African mines, imprints that resemble machinery. Most are explained away, misidentifications, hoaxes or natural phenomena that coincidentally resemble artificial forms. And perhaps that's all they are. But perhaps, just perhaps, one of them is real, and we missed it. Part of the problem is that we're not really looking. The fields of geology and archaeology are separated by more than just academic boundaries. They're looking at different layers, different timelines, and asking different questions. Archaeologists rarely dig deeper than a few meters. Geologists may analyze deep cores, but they're focused on fossils, sediments, and natural processes. What if the clue to an alien past is neither cultural nor geological, but both? What if the only way to find it is to ask a new kind of question, one that spans both disciplines? We should also consider that what lies beneath may not be material in the way we expect. Advanced civilizations may not leave monuments, but energy signatures, quantum anomalies, patterns in the distribution of certain isotopes. A highly advanced intelligence might encode information in geological formations themselves, using methods we have yet to understand. After all, what seems impossible to us may have been trivial to them. We've only been a technological species for a blink of an eye. Imagine what humans might be capable of in another million years, if we survive. Now imagine what someone else, from somewhere else, might have done with a million years head start. And yet we continue to search for signs of intelligent life out there, in the stars, on exoplanets, on the Martian surface. We spend billions sending telescopes into orbit, listening for signals, scanning for signs of water or carbon or atmospheric anomalies. But what if we've been looking in the wrong direction? What if the proof we seek is not above, but below? What if Earth itself holds the answers, locked beneath eons of rock, waiting for us to dig just a little deeper? Of course, digging into deep time is no easy task. The deeper you go, the more the Earth resists. Temperatures rise, pressure increases, equipment breaks, cores distort, data becomes difficult to interpret. Even identifying the age of deep rock layers can be challenging, but we are getting better. With new drilling technologies, seismic imaging, and nanomaterials, we are approaching the point where exploring deeper into Earth becomes feasible, not just for oil or minerals, but for knowledge itself. We may yet find a layer that makes us pause, a thin stratum with an unusual chemical composition, a sudden change in isotopes that doesn't match known patterns, a layer with synthetic molecules that shouldn't be there. These are the whispers of deep time, subtle but significant. And if we ever do find something, a true anomaly, what then? Would we recognize it for what it is? Or would we try to fit it into our existing frameworks, bending the evidence to match the story we already believe? Humans are pattern-seeking, but also narrative-bound. We are hesitant to rewrite the story unless the evidence is overwhelming. But deep time doesn't give up overwhelming evidence easily. It gives up fragments, clues, whispers. It challenges us to connect the dots without drawing conclusions too quickly. There is also the haunting possibility that Earth has already hosted not just one, but many intelligent species. Civilizations that rose and fell long before us. Some may have been biological, others artificial. Some might have been visitors. Others, perhaps, were born right here, in conditions long forgotten. Each of them may have left a trace in the rock, a signature in the mineral record, a scar in the layers we haven't yet reached. We call them alien, only because we can't see them yet. But maybe they were not alien at all. Maybe they were part of Earth's long and secret memory, its hidden past buried under billions of years. This idea is not just the stuff of fantasy. Even mainstream science is beginning to entertain the notion that human history is not the whole story of intelligence on Earth. The Silurian hypothesis, for instance, asks if an earlier industrial civilization could have existed in the geological past, and whether we'd be able to detect it now. The answer may be, but barely. Most evidence would have been erased or transformed. Only the most subtle signals could remain. That same reasoning applies to any other intelligent presence, alien or otherwise. Their traces may not look like ruins, but like anomalies, strange layers, odd isotopes, unexplained distributions of materials. And if that's true, then we need to start looking differently. We need to listen not just to the stars, but to the stones. We need to ask better questions. Why does this layer contain this particular ratio of metals? Why are these crystal structures so geometrically perfect? Why is there a pattern here where none should be? Why does this ancient stratum bear signs of rapid energy release, or chemical synthesis, or unnatural order? These are questions no one dares ask, not because they're foolish, but because they're frightening. They suggest we are not the first to walk this path, that we are not alone, not just in the cosmos, but in the Earth's own history. Deep time is humbling. It reminds us how young we are. It dwarfs our empires, our cities, even our entire species. But it also invites us to see more, to look past the surface, past the stories we tell ourselves, and into the darkness below. Somewhere in that darkness, perhaps, lie the remains not of bones or bricks, but of brilliance. A thought encoded in crystal, a design etched into rock, a message waiting, silent, under a mile of stone. If one day we dare to look, really look, deep into the earth, not just for oil or gold or fossils, but for truth, we may find that history did not begin with us. That intelligence has touched this world before. That we are not the first to wonder, to build, to fall. That in Earth's forgotten layers something waits. Something ancient. Something alien. Something left behind. Imagine a world very different from today. A world ruled not by our ancestors, not by mammals or primates, but by beings whose names we have never written, whose tools we have never held, whose civilization has vanished without trace. It's a haunting idea, one that forces us to look back across deep time and ask whether Earth has already seen one, or many, civilizations, erased by cosmic or terrestrial cataclysms. Could mass extinctions have wiped out intelligent life long before we even evolved? And if so, what would such annihilation leave behind? Mass extinction events are among the most dramatic moments in Earth's history. At least 5 of them are well established over the past approximately 500 million years. Each one meant the collapse of ecosystems, the sudden disappearance of large percentages of species, and the reshaping of life. The Permian Triassic event about 252 million years ago is the worst known. Up to 95% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates vanished. The Cretaceous Paleogene extinction 66 million years ago is famous for ending the reign of non-avian dinosaurs. We study these events through fossils, geology, sudden changes in sediments, and chemical signatures. We often assume these extinctions had natural causes: volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, climate shifts, ocean anoxia, perhaps supernovae. They were natural resets, wiping clean much of life's tapestry so something new could emerge. But what if, somewhere in those periods, there was a civilization of intelligence and industry that also fell victim to those same catastrophes? The question is not strictly could it be possible, but what would be required for that civilization to even leave a trace, and would that trace still exist today? To explore that, we need to understand what mass extinctions do. They suppress life. but they also affect the planet in ways that might disguise or destroy the remains of a civilization. During a mass extinction, environmental stresses increase. Climate swings, acid rain, ocean chemistry shifts, volcanic ash clouds, UV radiation, loss of atmospheric protection. Any surface structures, machinery, or technology exposed to those would suffer catastrophic damage. Stone erodes faster. Metallic structures oxidize. Biological systems collapse. Even more so when tectonic processes, erosion, burial, sedimentation, metamorphism begin their long work. Much can be lost. Over tens to hundreds of millions of years, nearly everything decays or is consumed by Earth's geological memory. A mass extinction may be the very event that wipes away an intelligent species and its artifacts before later centuries even know they were there. We do see mass extinctions leave traces, layers in rock carrying shocked quartz from impacts, iridium anomalies, an asteroid's signature, ash deposits, abrupt changes in fossil assemblages, chemical isotope shifts. These are signals that something unnatural might have happened, but they are natural in cause. For example, the Siberian Traps flood basalt event is strongly tied to the end. Permian extinction releasing huge volumes of volcanic gas, triggering climate collapse. Wikipedia. These massive volcanic provinces, or traps, generate lava flows covering hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, blanket the land, release sulfur, CO2, methane, all of which poison and suffocate ecosystems. Any civilization existing then, especially near the surface, would face annihilation by toxins, by acidifying oceans, by climate shifts, by collapse of ecosystems. Even buried structures might succumb to floods of lava, layers of rock burying, heat, chemical change. Asteroid impacts are another mechanism. The asteroid strike that ended the Cretaceous period generated an ejecta cloud that blocked sunlight, cooled the planet, triggered acid rain, fires, the shock waves, tsunamis, global fallout. A civilization caught during such events would suffer not just destruction but disassembly. Buildings would collapse, metals melt or oxidize, infrastructure razed, survivors might be buried or leave nothing but ambiguous traces, and in many cases crater rims are degraded or submerged. Fossils get crushed or dispersed. After tens of millions of years, what remains are faint signatures, shattered grains of rock, slight anomalies in chemical content, not recognizable ruins. But what about more prolonged extinctions? Events that unfold over hundreds of thousands or millions of years. These can be even more damaging to long-lasting clues of past intelligent life. Biological degradation, soil shifts, glaciations, erosion, sedimentation, metamorphism, plate tectonics, all act not only to erase but to distort. A structure built near a coast might get submerged by rising seas, then crushed by pressure, then melted by subduction. Land masses drift. Mountain ranges rise and fall. Earth recycles itself. Over deep time, almost nothing stays unchanged. If we hypothesize a past intelligent civilization that rose, perhaps during a relatively stable period, then mass extinctions would be their worst enemy, not because they alone destroy, but because they catalyze geological processes and cover up signals. The cosmic scale of mass extinction means that any created artifact would need to be either extraordinarily durable, buried deep, or built with such resilience that natural forces would be ineffective at destroying or concealing it. And even then, the passage of geological time would likely erase recognizable features. Another problem. Even if traces survive, recognition is not guaranteed. Geological layers are typically interpreted in certain frameworks: fossils, isotopes, mineral deposits. Scientists don't expect to find machines or artificial artifacts in pre-Cenozoic layers. They expect natural history. Anomalies might be overlooked or misclassified. Suppose there was a shard of metal, or a composite material unknown to modern science, buried in rock layers associated with the Permian. It might be interpreted as a meteorite fragment, a natural ore, or simply discarded as contamination. The burden of proof would be enormous, and even locating such a trace would be difficult. The further back in time, the fewer cores, fewer exposures, fewer preserved sections. Many sedimentary layers are missing or eroded. Even mass extinctions leave gaps in geological memory. For example, the oceanic crust on which marine fossils often depend is subducted, pulled under at tectonic plate boundaries, destroyed by heat and pressure. Continental crust preserves more, but even that is subject to uplift, erosion, and metamorphism. Regions that once were rich with life might now be under oceans, buried under other continents, or obliterated by volcanic activity. The places where preservation is possible, stable cratons, ancient shields, deep rock basins are rare, but they might hide something. We must also consider timescales. A civilization lasting tens or even hundreds of thousands of years might be remarkable to us, but in the grand geologic timescale, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, even billions of years, that's a flash. Nova events like mass extinctions, shifting continental plates, climate cycles operate on scales that can erase the distinctions a civilization might leave. If intelligent life did exist long ago, it would need to leave behind not only artifacts but signatures that can endure those timescales. Perhaps large isotope anomalies, synthetic chemicals that don't break down, or certain radionuclides. But those are subtle and require precise detection. So far, nothing unambiguously artificial has been identified from before human times in those categories. Another angle is to look at the cause and aftermath of mass extinctions themselves. Some extinction events appear abrupt, others more drawn out. Some seem driven by volcanism, Siberian traps at the Permian, Deccan traps around the K-Pal boundary, others by asteroid impacts or changes in sea level or anoxia. These events also often create stratostratigraphic layers rich in ash, crystals, metals, and chemical signatures of stress. If a civilization were present, some of its building materials, perhaps metals or compounds, might enter those same layers, but distinguishing those from volcanic metals or meteoritic debris is very difficult. For example, spikes in certain iridium levels are associated with asteroids. If an unknown civilization left behind rare metals, distinguishing them from natural mineral deposits or meteorites would require extremely precise geochemical fingerprinting, and that's expensive and rare. Then there is climate change. When mass extinctions happen, climate can shift dramatically. Carbon dioxide spikes, greenhouse heating, ocean acidification, loss of oxygen in oceans. Those changes leave chemical signatures, shifts in carbon isotope ratios, oxygen levels, sulfur cycles. If an intelligent civilization altered the climate, for example, burning large amounts of fuel, altering atmosphere composition, it might leave similar signals, but we see many past climatic shifts in the fossil or isotope record, and scientists generally attribute them to natural causes. For a false positive, inferring a civilization where there was none would be an error. And for a true civilization's signal, its effect would need to be large, prolonged, and unusual enough to stand out from volcanic or solar or tectonic causes. Let's imagine for a moment that there was an earlier intelligent race that rose right after a mass extinction, whose cause was environmental stress, but then themselves were wiped out by a second catastrophe. Their structures might have existed only briefly, before new catastrophes buried or destroyed them. Their tools, buildings, art, all might be limestone, metal, ceramics, materials that either erode, corrode, or break down, and their knowledge, if held only in fragile media like paper or organic materials, is gone without a fossil record. Even stone inscriptions become unreadable after enough wind, acid rain, chemical attack, and organic knowledge carriers, books, scrolls vanish entirely. Oral tradition leaves no physical trace after many thousands of years, let alone millions. Could a mass extinction wipe out an intelligent race so completely that nothing recognizable survives? Yes. If the extinction is deep enough in time, if the civilization is not extraordinarily durable, if geological processes are active, and if the artifacts are not preserved in stable regions, perhaps what remains is only chemical anomalies or isotopic weirdness in sediment cores, subtly different mineral concentrations, unusual radionuclide distributions, tiny hints in deep shale, in ocean floors, in ancient rock shields. But those hints might be so subtle that they are dismissed or overlooked, because they don't match any known artifact or culture. They may simply look like odd geochemistry. We do know that Earth has experienced catastrophes big enough to wipe out much of life, and each time the planet needed millions of years to recover. Ecosystems, biodiversity, complexity, all needed long stretches of stability after extinctions to rebuild. Humanity itself is possible because some mass extinctions left room for mammals to flourish. But do any of them also hold room for a civilization before us? The evidence so far says no, but that might just be because the traces were too weak, too buried, too erased. The geological record is incomplete. Rocks are missing. Fossils are biased towards certain environments and organisms. We have not drilled everywhere. We have not examined every deep sediment core. We have not yet learnt to look for many of the signs that an ancient industry or civilization might leave behind. So when people say there are no alien ruins, perhaps the answer is maybe there were, but mass extinctions and the geological chaos they trigger wiped them out, or buried them so deeply, and destroyed or distorted them so completely that what remains is indistinguishable from the natural background noise of Earth's deep past. And maybe the only surviving evidence is a strange layer here or there, an unusual isotopic signature, a trace metal anomaly, a compound that shouldn't exist naturally, signs that are either too small to confidently identify or too radical to accept without fear. If one day we find something striking among the layers, something unexplainable, something that resists natural cause, then mass extinctions might be revealed, not just as events of destruction, but as covers for something lost before us. If humans are the latest, perhaps we are not the beginning of intelligence on this planet, but the inheritors of a planet that reset itself many times. And if that's true, then mass extinctions are more than footnotes in Earth's story. They are punctuation marks. They are erasers. They are blank pages in a book we can hardly read. And yet, the possibility raises both dread and hope. Dread because it means our civilization could itself be vulnerable to catastrophe, natural or self-made. Hope because it means we might yet find something in those erased epochs. A shard, a chemical hint, a geological curio that refuses simplicity. Something small, but enough to shatter our story of the world. Because if a global catastrophe wiped out a prior intelligent race, then history is deeper than we think. Civilization more fragile, and time more indifferent, but also more generous, perhaps, in leaving behind tiny whispers of what once was. The human genome is like a book written in a language we are still learning. It contains chapters upon chapters of history, of migrations, mutations, disease, adaptation. When we sequence a human cell's DNA, we see signatures of ancient ancestors, of small genetic changes that made us who we are, upright walkers, tool users, storytellers. But what if there's more? What if embedded somewhere in that genetic book, not in the well-understood parts, but in what we call junk DNA, or in mysterious anomalies, there lie traces of something else, something alien or pre-human or engineered? Science has already discovered that much of our DNA does not directly code for proteins. These known coding regions, sometimes called introns or formerly junk DNA, house regulatory elements, repeated sequences, epigenetic markers, and mysteries we have barely begun to interpret. Some of that known coding DNA plays essential roles in gene expression, timing, regulation, but a lot remains poorly understood. That gap is where alternative speculators Writers, thinkers, curious scientists see possibilities. If a prior species manipulated life on Earth, or if life on Earth was seeded through panspermia, or if there was some ancient intervention, might some signature of that show up in the modern human genome? One provocative hypothesis comes from work by Mukakov and Sherbak from Kazakhstan. They proposed that certain patterns in the genetic code, patterns of symmetry, numeric regularities, ideographic symbolism, could be interpreted as an intelligent signature embedded in DNA. The idea is that the genetic code itself, once fixed early in life's history, is remarkably stable. If someone wanted to leave a message for distant descendants or across cosmic time, DNA might be a durable vehicle. Their claim is that some arithmetic patterns in the assignment of codons, triplets of nucleotides to amino acids, show extremely low probability of occurring purely by chance. This has been interpreted by some to suggest that the genetic code carries a kind of biological SETI message. Of course, this idea is deeply controversial. Mainstream biologists respond that many of the observed patterns can be artifacts of selection, chemical constraints, bias in how codons assign, or just human pattern seeking. Statistical pattern recognition can often find something if you look hard enough. Moreover, the mechanisms of molecular biology, natural selection, mutation, drift, can produce features we might interpret as non-random, even if their origin is strictly natural. Many of the claims about alien signatures in DNA have not passed peer review in a way that convinces the larger scientific community. Let's consider what evidence or signature we might expect if DNA did carry an alien trace, or if humanity had been engineered. First, there might be parts of our genome that are highly unusual, not just non-coding, but non-homologous to anything in the fossil or comparative genetic record. We might find sequences that match no known terrestrial life forms, or sequences with base pairing, codon usages, or nucleotide chemistry that violate the norms we see across all life: bacteria, archaea, eukaryotes. Second, there could be signals of abrupt jumps, genetic features that appear fully functional, highly complex and sudden in evolution, not explainable by gradual change, gene duplication, or known mechanisms of mutation and selection. Third, one might expect some signature event in our molecular history, maybe horizontal gene transfer from some source unknown, foreign material inserted, then preserved. Ancient viral insertions are already part of our genome. Endogenous viral elements, those are natural, but if there were insertions that were engineered, perhaps we would see extremely unusual viral or plasmid sequences, or patterns of divergence that don't match expected models. Fourth, perhaps molecular clocks in some lineages might show discrepancies, that is, lineages diverging at different rates, suggestive of outside influence, or missing ancestors that cannot be reconciled by fossil record. So what does the current science say? At present, there is no widely accepted verified genetic evidence that humans were engineered by aliens or influenced directly by a prior species in a way that left unambiguous alien DNA. The comparisons of human DNA with that of other organisms, fossils, ancient DNA extractions, paleogenomics, all so far have fit within natural evolutionary frameworks. Our closest relatives, the great apes, share enormously similar DNA. Divergence times inferred from DNA from fossils from geology are broadly consistent. There are no published replicable findings showing alien foreign sequences or codons designed in a way clearly indicating intelligent origin outside natural biology. The Makakov and Sherbak paper attracted media interest, especially in popular science outlets. However, critics point out statistical issues, the possibility of data minning or seeing meaning where none was intended. One common problem: once you decide to look for patterns, you often will find patterns even in random noise. Human brains are wired to detect order, so claims of message in DNA are treated with caution. Rigorous statistical modeling is needed. Alternative hypotheses must be eliminated, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Another point: even if alien engineering occurred, the signature might not survive. DNA undergoes mutations, selection pressures, recombination, drift. Over tens or hundreds of thousands of generations, even engineered sequences may get broken, modified, lost. Also, if changes were made only to non-coding regions, which have fewer constraints, they may drift or be overwritten. If engineering was very ancient, many markers might now be unrecognizable. Paleogenetics and ancient DNA research offer a window into what genomes looked like in the past, but only for relatively recent periods, tens of thousands or up to 1 million years in special preservation settings. DNA degrades rapidly under heat, moisture, radiation. After a few 100,000 years, most genomic sequences are destroyed. Beyond that, only fragments remain, and those are hard to reconstruct. So for claims about DNA signatures millions of years ago, science faces serious technical limitations. Then there's the question, what counts as alien? If life came via panspermia, seeding of life by meteorites or comets, then all life might share a common origin, meaning our DNA might look alien only if compared with some other independent origin. Or if engineering came from a life form that used similar biochemistry, DNA, RNA, proteins, then they might modify existing life and the changes may resemble just natural genetic variation from our perspective. There are also pseudo-archaeological claims, like the Star Child skull, which has been claimed by some to be alien or hybrid, but DNA testing of that skull has not produced results that support extraordinary claims. It appears to be a malformed human child with congenital conditions rather than alien. In sum, the strongest arguments in favor of alien trace in our DNA are theoretical or speculative. They depend on interpreting statistical patterns, mythic or symbolic readings of junk DNA, or hypotheses about panspermia, or directed panspermia life seeded intentionally. But the scientific consensus remains that there is no verified evidence supporting the idea that humanity was genetically engineered by an alien prior species. Still, the possibility continues to fascinate because it raises deep questions. What is life? What is natural versus artificial? If someone or something engineered life on Earth, what was their motive? And how would we even recognize their work after so much time has passed? Science does allow for open questions. We accept that we don't know everything about how life began, or how complex regulatory networks evolved, or how much junk DNA is truly without function. Advances in genomics, evolutionary biology, epigenetics, paleogenomics might reveal surprises, maybe unusual regulatory elements, non-coding RNAs or small peptides with unexpected functions. Maybe future comparative genomics will uncover lineages completely unknown that share unexpected homologies, or reveal that certain patterns in the genetic code are more constrained than we thought. If we discovered something like a sequence that matches no known life form or a codon assignment so different that we can't derive it from mutation and selection, then that might be evidence of something extraordinary. But until then, the default assumption is that human genetics reflects a long natural history shaped by evolution, environment, mutation, drift, selection, with no known alien intervention. We should ask, why do people believe in alien DNA engineering? Because many cultures have stories of gods, creators, and seeding of life. Because the sudden appearance of Homo sapiens in the fossil record, our advanced brain, cognition, culture, all feel extraordinary. Because some parts of our genome are still mysterious. Junk DNA seems purposeless. Epigenetics is wild. Horizontal gene transfer sometimes jumps boundaries. These unknowns create space in people's minds for radical ideas. DNA mysteries also force us to confront humility. Even with all our technology, we've decoded billions of base pairs, yet vast sections of our genome are poorly understood. Evolution doesn't always produce clean maps. There are misfits, junk, weird regulatory sequences, epigenetic markers, introns, pseudogenes. These are places where something alien might be lodged, or something we simply don't yet understand. The genomic dark matter. Imagine if in our future, a civilization more advanced than us sequences ancient DNA, from, say, fossilized hominids, ancient mammals, and find some unusual sequences, maybe not obviously alien, but anomalies, shared across species, or present in many unexpected branches, or strangely resistant to mutation, that kind of pattern might force a rethink. But even then, proving alien engineering would require excluding every natural explanation, convergent evolution, ancient viruses, mobile genetic elements, epigenetics, mutations, regulatory elements, neutral drift. Some scientists are wary not only of wild hypotheses but of bad science, claims not replicated, data not available, biases, sensationalism. The public often hears simplified or exaggerated versions, alien signal in our DNA, rather than the cautious technical framing. These patterns are unusual and might merit further study. Responsible research demands large data sets, cross-species comparisons, ancient DNA when available, rigorous statistical models, and a willingness to accept null results. One speculative possibility: what if there was a prior species, not necessarily alien in the sense of off-Earth, but a highly advanced life form that seeded other planets or seeded Earth, then left? That species might have been biological or hybrid biological technological. If so, its DNA contributions might be small, fragmented, or only in non-coding regulatory systems. Survivals might be faint, they might not even activate to anything obvious. Finally, we may consider that even if engineered, life evolves. Over time, natural selection, drift, mutation will transform the engineered traits, perhaps removing or hiding signature elements. Unless the engineered parts conferred advantage, they may degrade. Unless carefully preserved, engineered code may be overwritten. And over time, the genome becomes a palimpsest, layers of natural change obscuring past interventions. So, are our genetics hiding alien traces? Current scientific evidence strongly leans no, or at least no credible support so far. But the mysteries in genomics, regulatory complexity, dark matter, epigenetic mechanisms, leave open the possibility. Even more, the science of ancient DNA is still young. As methods improve, contamination control, long-read sequencing, extraction from previously inaccessible fossils, we may get finer resolution of deep evolutionary history. If a discovery came, a sequence with no known homologue or regulator pattern that makes no sense in any known context, or a codon usage that cannot be explained by earthly chemistry, it would shake the foundations of biology. It could force us to consider that life on Earth was influenced, seeded, or taken over by something else. But until then, the safest assumption is that human genetics reflects natural biological evolution. In the end, DNA is both our map and our mystery. It connects us to every creature that ever lived on Earth. It shows us migrations, adaptation, survival. It reveals ancient struggles and triumphs of life. And while the idea that our genetics could hold alien traces is speculative, it is not entirely beyond imagining. It reminds us that there's still so much we don't know about our origins, that questions about identity, origin, and design are entwined with science, not just myth. Maybe someday, deep in our DNA, we will find a clue, not proof, but a hint that changes how we see ourselves in the story of life. If we are engineered, influenced, or seeded, that fact may lie in the genome. And right now, we are learning to read that book more carefully than ever.